Let's talk a little bit about sequencing, because I know that it can be very overwhelming when you're preparing a class and you just don't know how to link the various asanas. So when we're talking about vinyasa, we're talking about sequencing. The biggest tip that I could give you is make sure that your notes are very clear for yourself. I remember that when I went to my intermediate vinyasa sequencing teacher training, everybody spoke vinyasa Sanskrit and I only spoke hatha Sanskrit, and it just got very confusing. Ashwasanchalanasana was known as Anjanyasana, Ekapada Pranamasana was known as Vrikshasana, and it just, none of it made sense. And so I made myself draw. I'm a horrible drawer. I'm sure you've already noticed from the other lessons that I've taught you. But for example, there you go. Let's say warrior 2. If I spell out warrior 2 or 2 like that, already that took me a longer time to write. And when my notes, especially if I'm standing, my notes are on the ground, chances are that the fine print I won't be able to see so easily. Whereas if I draw a little stick figure, I like to draw the nose to see where the nose is pointing. It doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, I'm the only one that reads my notes. My students don't even know what my notes look like. And if I draw something that doesn't really make sense, like for example, Trikonasana, and I'm like, is that an arm? Is that a leg? Sometimes underneath I'll write trick, Trikonasana, or I'll write the Sanskrit underneath the drawing so that I know what I'm talking about. But that's my first tip for you. Try and make your notes very legible. Even if you want to use the different colors that I'm using so that you can really see, okay, we're in point number 1, we're in the introduction. Okay, I know that point number 7 is when I'm doing my asanas. Yeah, so making things very clear for you so that when you're guiding, because you're standing, you can easily see the notes that you have. Okay, so the first thing to start with when we are sequencing is to think about our theme, and we're gonna work backwards. So if we think of our theme, let's say we're doing a letting go. When I say work backwards, that means we're going to choose our asanas according to the theme, and then we're going to think about what order to put them in. So if I think of letting go, I definitely think about chopping wood. Ha! So that's from Malasana or Namaskarasana. You could also do it from goddess pose. I'm going to write Malasana. And then I'm going to attempt to draw chopping wood. And I'm just going to write chop. We can draw an arrow saying ha. Okay, so this could be one of my asanas that we could repeat 5 times. If I'm thinking of letting go, I'm thinking of warrior 2 and maybe throwing some arrows. If I have a thought in my head, I pull the thought out of my head and release it. So we could do some lovely warrior 2. I'm going to write warrior 2 archer. Yeah. Where you can pretend to have a bow and arrow. Another beautiful letting go would be a really nice twist. Maybe we want to have a twist in Anjanyasana, which is known as Ardha Chandrasana. So in Hatha, it's Ardha Chandrasana. In Vinyasa, it's known as Anjanyasana. So that's where the nose and smile is. This is someone from Ashwasanchalanasana where their knee is forward and then they're coming into a twist. I'm just going to write Anj, twist, because I know that it's Anjanyasana. So far, this has a side, this has a side, this does not have a side. Letting go and releasing. What else can I think of from the top of my head? Maybe Paschimottanasana, where you're really letting go of the weight of your body. So a nice forward fold. Ooh, that person's arms are short. Haha. See, it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm sharing my horrible drawings with you, but I think more or less you understand. If this makes no sense, then I just write Paschimo. Sometimes I'll even see a drawing and what did I just draw? So I'll have to write a little code for myself. So Paschimottanasana doesn't have a right or left either. And then let's do one last asana. we could get a little back bend in there. Maybe I want to do Matsyasana, but maybe we want to do a Baddha Konasana Matsyasana variation. So fish pose, but we want to have the legs in reclined butterfly. So I'm going to write Matsy / Baddha Konasana. And I'll sometimes even draw in the props that we might need. We might need a block here. We might need a block here at the base of the foot or for the forehead. We might need a block or a bolster here under the head. So you can also remind yourself of what your students are going to need, if they need a strap, what they might need. Okay, so we've chosen 5 asanas related to the letting go theme. Now let's think of what order, because when they finish in Samastitihi, after Surya Namaskar, they probably don't want to jump into Matsyasana on their back. So I might actually leave Matsyasana last because they're closest to Shavasana. Or we could make Paschimottanasana last because you do your back bend and then your forward fold. This is the beauty of vinyasa. There's no right or wrong. So I could make this number 5 and this number 4, or the other way around. This is number 5 and this is number 4. It's really, you have the creative freedom to decide for yourself. And also, I really recommend that you do your own flow to see what feels better. Okay, so let's start placing in order. I think it would make a lot of sense to start with a Surya Namaskar B. So from Utkatasana, we could start the flow and get them into Warrior 2 from that Warrior 1. So I'm going to start, after Surya Namaskar A, the controlled round, we're going to start in Surya Namaskar B, which is Utkatasana. I'll write Utka. Okay, Utkatasana. Uttanasana, forward fold. Halfway lift, Uttanasana. Step walker, jump back, and come into Chaturanga Dandasana. We can write Chat. And then come into Urdhva Mukha Svanasana, upward facing dog. Adho Mukha Svanasana, downward facing dog. Come into that Warrior 1. And then we're going to start the Warrior 2 archers with the left leg back. So the right leg is forward. So this is going to be asana number 1. And we're going to do it 5 times. So I'm going to write right leg forward. Okay, then from there, it might make sense for them to come into the Anjanyasana twist. So from Warrior 2, they can rainbow their arms down and bring their left knee down. So this could be already asana number 2, again with the right leg forward. Because from Warrior 2, they've just brought their left knee down and they're going to come into the twist. So their chest is facing the right side. They've twisted over to the right side. So we need to get them to do 3 asanas that don't have a side and 2 asanas on the other leg. So we could break up the flow a little bit. And we could have them take a big step to the front of their mat. So from here, they're kind of like in equestrian pose, Ashwasanchalanasana. And they can take a big step forward and come into Malasana. And then start to chop wood, inhale up and ha, exhale down. They can do that 5 times. They've done the archers 5 times. They've held Anjanyasana twist for 5 breaths. And now they're going to repeat Malasana, chopping wood, ha, for 5 repetitions. Okay, and now they're standing, they've just finished chopping wood after 5 times and they're at the top of their mat. So we might as well do another round of Surya Namaskar B because you're really close to Utkatasana. You don't have to do this, by the way. This is just the easiest way of how I'm envisioning or imagining the flow to look like. So we could come back and do another Surya Namaskar B. So we could say after 3, go back to Surya Namaskar B again. And from Warrior 1, this time, you've brought the left leg forward. So you've done Warrior 1 on the left leg the second time. And then that means that your 4th asana is left leg forward. Warrior 2, and you're doing archers with your left leg forward. Then from here, all you need to do is bring your right knee down. So this is your 5th asana with your left leg forward. And now your twist is towards that forward knee. So now you're twisted over to the left side. And now we just have 2 asanas left. We get to decide which order we put them in. It really doesn't matter. We get to decide, do we want to go back up into chopping more wood? You can if you want to. If you want, you can take another step at the top of your mat and say you want to chop wood again. You could. Say you don't want to chop wood again and you just want to come into a seated position. You could. You might want it to make it a little bit more flowy. So maybe from here you would come into cat and cow. You could add in another asana. Yeah, just because I said 5 asanas that you hold and you breathe with doesn't mean that you're only allowed 5 asanas. You're allowed a few more. You just need to see, you don't have to hold them for 5 breaths. You just need to see what would make most sense. So we could repeat malasana and chopping wood. But maybe instead, after our Anjaneyasana twist, we want to come into Marjariasana. I'm just going to write Marj. Cat and cow. And then from there, you can sit in Vajrasana. Yeah, Vaj, Rasan, Vajra, I've written. And then you would come into, let's do Paschimottanasana. So the forward fold. You'd swing your legs over to the side. So that would be asana number 7. Inhale, raise your arms up in line with the ears. Exhale, forward fold. You get your forward fold, and then you finish in your yin. Let's make it nice and comfortable so they're lying on a block or a cushion. They open up their hip flexors. They really release and let go into a reclined version of Baddha Konasana and Matsyasana variation. 5 breaths here. And then their 9th asana is going to be Shavasana. So they are coming into corpse pose. So what I would do is, this is the first draft. This looks very messy. If I had my notes like this, I would get very confused looking at what I'm actually doing. So this is how I would start to plan, and then I would actually draw it out in order so that it would make more sense to me. So I would actually draw out Surya Namaskar B, and then number 1, Warrior 2, Archer. Number 2, Anjaneyasana twist, right leg forward. Number 3, Malasana, chop wood. And I would actually rewrite this in a nice list form so that when I'm standing at the top of my mat, I can see. Also a good tip, because sometimes it's, I don't remember my flow, I don't remember what I have to do. You don't have to memorize it. A good tip is make sure that you know what asana comes next. So for example, when you place them in Warrior 2, take a look at your notes. After they've done this and you've done your hands on assists, you already know that they're going to come into Anjaneyasana twist. Because you've already said, okay, after this, I just want to check everybody's knee. Yes, they're good. Okay, now we're going to bring that back knee down and come into a twist. Okay, so it's not like you have to memorize every single asana. You're allowed to look at your notes at any point. Yeah, you don't have to memorize everything. Look at your notes. But it's nice to think ahead. So think of where's the next place that they're going to go so that I can guide that fluidly. Also, don't forget that you need to remind them that they can let go at any point. They can always release. They can come into child's pose. They can come into Shavasana if they need to. Yeah, make sure that they're not giving up. So if they're coming into child's pose, say that they can stay there for a moment, but maybe they want to try and come into cat and cow, just so that they're not totally giving up. But if you notice that they're breathing really strong, and something doesn't sound very natural, it sounds very forced, then you would actually want to remind them to come into a relaxation pose and not overdo things. So when it comes to sequencing, remember, there's no right and wrong. You have total creativity of the order in which you want to place the asanas in. Remember, you want to think of why you've placed your students in this asana, what objective you want them to feel or experience, and where's the biggest point of injury, and work backwards from there. How do you want to prevent them from getting injured? What would you want to warm up specifically? What would you want them to do specifically before coming into that asana?